Hey guys, Mark Carpenter here with Clearly Agile, and today I'm going to talk to you about choosing the right sprint length. Now this can be kind of tricky sometimes. It can vary from project to project, even industry to industry. And if you're new to Scrum, it can be especially tough because you don't always know what factors to weigh in when making that decision. So to help you in today's video, I'm going to talk through some common sprint lengths and some things to consider for each. And then I'm going to give you 3 factors that you can use to help make your decision on your sprint length. So let's dive right in. So to start us off, let's go with the largest sprint length we can. So the Scrum Guide says you can have a sprint of 30 days or less. So let's just go with a 30-day sprint. Now this can be common in industries that are highly regulated, that have a lot of outside constraints that make it difficult to do anything in less than 30 days. But I would say if that is not the position you're in, I would strongly urge you to go for a smaller iteration, primarily because it's very difficult to determine how much work you can accomplish in 30 days. Most teams tend to overestimate the amount of work they could do in that time. And then 3, it just doesn't leave you in a very agile position. Plans and priorities change quickly, and you don't want to be stuck in a sprint that doesn't. So, to reiterate, 30-day sprints, good for highly regulated industries, but not ideal. Now the next most popular sprint length is the 3-week sprint. Now this could be useful if you have a team that's used to working in a waterfall methodology and now they're moving into Scrum for the first time, but maybe they're a little hesitant about working in these small iterations. The 3-week sprint can be good because it's long enough to where they can get a lot of work done in the sprint, but it's still short enough to be a nice iterative approach. Now on an agility scale, it's probably around a medium. It's better than a 30-day sprint. But again, if you can get to a shorter iteration, I would encourage you to do so. But if you're getting a lot of pushback from your team, try out the 3-week sprint. It's a great way to at least get them into the habit and the mindset of working in iterations. Next, we have the highly popular 2-week sprint. Now, this is certainly one of the most common sprint lengths among Scrum teams. It seems to be that sweet spot between agility, where you have these nice short iterations, while still having enough time to get enough work done to show a good amount of progress at the end of your sprint. Now, let's say at the end of that sprint, none of that work gets used. You've only lost 2 weeks of time. Now, imagine that happening in a 30-day sprint. That would be catastrophic to your entire project. It'd be a huge blow. But with the 2-week sprint, it's not an issue. So if your team is game, they're ready to do Scrum, they're ready to work in iterations, I would encourage you to go for a 2-week sprint. Can't go wrong. And lastly, we have the 1-week sprint. Now this isn't quite as common as the 2-week sprint, but it is used successfully both inside and outside of tech. It's great if you need to make small, fast changes and get them out to market quickly, or if you have an experimental approach to your product development. The 1-week sprint can be a really useful sprint length. Now, it can be a little intense. You may want to be a little more seasoned of a Scrum team if you're going to do the 1-week sprint length. But if you need those quick iterations and you need to get stuff out fast, 1-week sprint can be a great way to do it. So we talked about some common sprint lengths and things to consider for each. Now I'm going to give you 3 more ideas that you can use when weighing in your decision for your sprint length. So 1, don't overthink it. If things aren't working out, it's probably not the fault of the sprint length itself. It's much more likely maybe you're pulling in too many stories, or maybe your stories aren't broken down into small enough chunks, but it's probably not the fault of the actual sprint length. Plus, if you need to change your sprint length, you can always do so. Just make sure you do it at the right time. So let's say you have a retrospective, you talk to the team, they want to change the sprint length. Then from the next sprint forward, that's when you would change the sprint length. Don't change it in the middle of the sprint. Number 2, if you're working in a scaled environment, you want to use the same sprint length as the other teams on that project. So let's say you join a project, it's already in a scaled environment, they have other teams that are already sprinting. Just choose the sprint length that they're already using. If you're starting a project and it's brand new and it's going to be a scaled project with multiple teams, then you want to make sure everybody also, again, chooses the same sprint length. It's so much easier to work together if everyone is in the same cadence. And then number 3, it's important that when you are making your decision on your sprint length, you consider the number of opportunities you have to inspect and adapt. This is one of the biggest benefits of Scrum, and one of the primary opportunities to inspect and adapt is that retrospective. And your sprint length directly determines how many opportunities you have to have a retrospective. So let's say you choose a 30-day sprint, then you're going to have about 12 opportunities a year to inspect and adapt on the way you're working. If you're doing a 3-week sprint, then you're going to have about 16 opportunities a year to improve your team and continue to get better. Now, once you get down to a 2-week sprint, now you have 24 opportunities a year to inspect and adapt and improve on the way you're working. So already from a 30-day sprint to a 2-week sprint, you can see the 2-week sprint gives you twice the number of opportunities to improve. And then down to a 1-week sprint, you have around 52 opportunities to inspect and adapt. So a very important thing, if you want to get the full benefits of Scrum, you want to make sure your sprint cadence gives you those opportunities to have those retrospectives and continuously improve your team. So just to run through those 3 again, don't overthink it. The sprint length probably is not at fault. Number 2, if you're working in a scaled environment, everybody should work in the same sprint length. And number 3, definitely consider the cadence of your retrospectives when choosing your sprint length and the number of opportunities you have to inspect and adapt. All right, that is it. So we covered some key concepts that you can consider when choosing your sprint length. Hopefully now you can go forth and sprint in confidence. Remember guys, Scrum is easy to learn but difficult to master. So like all things, it's going to be a little rocky at first. Just keep at it and it will get better and better. If you want some more cool tips and tricks on Scrum and Agile practices, be sure to subscribe to the Clearly Agile YouTube channel. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you next time. Stay agile.